esteemed teachers and dear students, I greet all of you with my most heartfelt regards.
Organize sanayi bölgelerinde mesleki eğitim merkezleri açılış programı münasebetiyle
On the occasion of this inauguration ceremony, it's a great pleasure to host you at this presidential complex. I also thank you, each and every one of you, for participating at our inauguration ceremony. Today, the Turkish economy, on behalf of the Turkish economy and industry, an important project is being inaugurated. With our Ministry of Education and cooperation with the Ministry of Industry, we are inaugurating vocational training centers in organized industrial zones, which is going to be an important project for our country.
Organize sanayi bölgelerimiz bu projeyle eğitim alanında sorumluluk üstleniyor.
And in the field of education, we will have to assume responsibility, bringing theory together with practice and further strengthening public-private cooperation. This project hopefully will be auspicious for our students, for our teachers, for the representatives of the business world. Organized with the help of the Ministry of National Education and also all other relevant authorities and ministries, I would like to congratulate all those who contributed. For long years, we have been struggling to hold our values dear without feeling foreign to our own values. We are exerting efforts to claim the position we deserve. Even though we have achieved the biggest momentum of our history since 2012, the efforts of Turkey achieving the development of industry dates back to long years before, organized and realized by the Ottoman state, and then reflected in economy, society, education. The basic of reform work indeed aimed to seek after its old glory. Due to the uninterrupted wars that took place during such periods, even though our efforts were interrupted, modernizing, industrialization, and development movements somehow continued. The level of contemporary civilization was indeed a matter for military, humanitarian, and also economic issues, and meant such goals as well, organized by the incentives of Gazi Mustafa Kemal. Izmir Economics Congress and the Congress's decisions showed that clearly. However, just like the decisions of the Congress were not fully practiced, the development steps of the new republic were taking baby steps, and the efforts of some circles prevented those. In an era when industrialization took speed, in particular in Europe and West, we could not make use of the opportunities that came our way because of the challenges we had internally. And then, due to the military coups that took place almost decades apart one another, Turkey paid a lot of hefty prices and a lot of wounds it endured. And when the expansion mobilization initiated by the late Turgut Özal was going to gain speed, due to political instability, this project was also interrupted. The vicious circle Turkey was confined to, despite all efforts exerted, was not broken away. The February 28th and the following 2002 crisis indeed made our society pay heavy prices for many long years. Indeed, just like in all other areas, in terms of industrialization, some did make our country fall behind, and this is the outcome of a bad perspective. The efforts of the entrepreneurs who aimed to advance industrialization were indeed turned into a matter of mocking by some politicians purposefully. Across all corners of Anatolia, there were those who wanted to develop, produce, and export products, but despite that, the unlimited support given to some external forces instead is clear enough to show such dirty games. And this indeed was concealed with the misleading approaches and practices. And unfortunately, in 1950s and 1970s, in 1990s, Turkey missed out on great transformations because of those. And the countries we were racing against in terms of development did develop very rapidly while we were confined to social, political, and economic regression. Distinguished guests, on one hand of this process, we also had education. In terms of education and training, those who were grounded, who were at peace with a liberal system, were driven away. And unfortunately, models that did put our children to certain frameworks were opted for. Village institutes like trials were turned into instruments of ideological dissemination, and that's why they failed. As our nation saw many values such as Imam Hatip schools they held on to, as they saw them dear, were considered otherwise. And industrial high schools and vocational high schools were ignored by some in terms of the development of the country, and they also endured heavy impacts because of their initiatives. The anti-democratic interventions made to our education system indeed dragged our system of education to a dilemma. Rather than offering our children systems in which they could go after their dreams and make them come true, opposite systems were imposed. And February 28 indeed brought about the coefficient practice, which indeed was, if you will, like a dagger hit in the heart of our education system, and we still see the manifestations of that. Just like in education in all other fields, we had Turkey as such, which struggled such calamities. Dark clouds loomed large over our country, and the hopes of our people were dwindling. From our industrialists to our youth, all sections of our society indeed were suffocating. We then immediately rolled up our sleeves and said that we would have Turkey rise on 4 main pillars, and these were education, health, justice, and security, as we expressed. Just like our other commitments made for our nation, we have always remained faithful to our promises. No matter what the conditions of our country are, we have never allowed the matter of education pushed aside or to a secondary degree. The biggest lion's share was always allocated for education in our budgets. For example, in 2002, we allocated there was only 7.5 billion allocated for education. However, in 2022, including higher education, it is 274 billion lira. The number of classrooms increased from 340,000 to 606,000. And we have equipped all corners of our country with modern educational institutions. So far, more than 714,000 teacher appointments have been materialized. And at the end of this month, hopefully, we will be appointing 15,000 more teachers, from laboratories to libraries, all the way to gyms and sports complexes. We equip our schools and have done so for our students. And thanks to such investments, we have removed the obstacles in front of our educational system and also ensured the dissemination of all educational means across our country. Especially for girls, othering or pressuring practices were removed and abolished, and we have increased their participation to education more and more. Currently, in fundamental education, girls and boys have access to education equally. However, in our country, there are still some circles in our country who do not want our girls exercise their rights of education and learning, and there are some people who are disturbed by that. The mentality that made this country experience the shame of coefficiency system now still again holds on this system of threatening. And I would like to warn those people who are enthusiastic about dictating. In terms of protecting our rights and liberties, July 15 showed the resoluteness of our country one more time. That night, we once again show that nobody will have enough power to make Turkey go back to the dark times of February 28. The bitter memories left behind by the single-party regime will never be experienced due to some ideological fixations or some other reasons. Some did build walls in between girls and schools, and we will never allow such walls to be built again. Likewise, no matter what their ages are, everyone will be learning about their culture, religion, faith, and as the administrators of the government and also as those who have mobilized for education, we know that education, learning, especially high-quality education, is the guarantee of our bright futures. The youth of this country deserves the best and the highest quality at every circumstance. The way to bring our country to a place that is assertive enough goes through education and learning, and for that reason, to support education and increase the number of jobs, we attach special importance to vocational education and training. But just like education is difficult to build, reconstruct, and construct, it is also going to take time to compensate for the mistakes of the past. That's why, with the steps we take, we aim to go over OECD average figures, and the share of the vocational schools which fell below OECD average was brought to higher degrees and exceeded the average of OECD. The ratio of the vocational school graduates has increased to 43%. The average, the same ratio for OECD average is 36. However, we are 48, and the average of the EU is 43%. With more projects we will materialize, such programs will be optimized more, I believe, because we need it more than anyone else. That's why our experience in technical and vocational education will be brought to international levels, and for that reason we commission a new project. The international vocational and technical Anatolian high schools will be opening up new horizons for our own kids, and the system will also give opportunity to the students who will come from various other geographies. The International Vocational and Technical Anatolian High School project hopefully will be auspicious, and I would like to congratulate everyone who contributed to the project. Distinguished guests, policies that support vocational and technical education that bear many fruitful results, as we observe, and we step further steps ahead to support such system. For example, the 13% of treasury cut deducted from the rotating capital has been brought down to 5%. This way we will be increasing the capacity of vocational educational institutions, and we cleared the path for our students for them to get more vocational training. The income in 2005 was 503 million. However, the production capacity target last year was 1 billion, and we have gone even beyond that and have broken records in terms of vocational training. In terms of rotating capital, our students and teachers took a significant share from the production. As compared to 2020, despite the pandemic, our income has increased by 31% and has come to 1.62 billion lira level. For this year, we have a goal to achieve 1.5 billion. All students receiving vocational training also will be ensured for their will be supported for their income, at least for them to receive a minimum wage, and we more than minimum wage. And we in the previous months at this very venue made an inauguration for 50 new RD and vocational centers and schools. The Ministry of National Education, within the framework of intellectual property rights, has been undertaking a lot of great studies. The patents or beneficial models, design and trademark or brand registration efforts increased to 1,512 and went beyond our goals. In the forthcoming periods, to increase the number of studies and also to have the patented and registered works and products, we will have more efforts exerted. Another study we have to contribute to vocational training and education is the vocational training centers. The vocational training centers which do educate and train apprentices and also masters was a legacy, has been a legacy of our culture, of Ahism. We, with new projects, will continue to preserve our great legacy and even enrich it further. And for this reason, in particular, the vocational training centers, in other words, the centers for apprenticeship, will be included into the full scope of the system, and also they will be deemed as high school graduates, and all the problems about that in terms of formalities have been abolished. And the vocational training programs will be completed in a short period of 6 months, and our people will be able to practice their professions. And again, a few months ago in this very hall, we gave good news that we would be able to making new regulations for the apprentices at the vocational centers. 30% of the minimum wage will be paid, and the amendment on the law for this has already been finalized. Likewise, those who are qualified to be a foreman will be receiving half of the minimum wage, which is 2,126 liras per month. These wages, which will be met by the enterprises, indeed will be reimbursed as state incentives, and the students will be insured for vocational and occupational accidents and occasional safety and health. And we see that there is a great increase in demand for vocational training, and I'm very pleased to express that. Before the amendments on the law, the number of the students at vocational training centers was 159,000. However, this figure has come to 250,000. By the end of the year, we aim to include 1 million young people to the scope of such vocational education system, and we aim higher. While our country is growing, advancing, and when the gears of industry do turn effectively and productively, there is a high demand also coming from the industry side, and vocational and technical training and education in this regard contributes a lot. The graduates of vocational high schools and vocational centers indeed do occupy the 88% of many positions, and this is a great indicator of that. The quality increase in vocational training, of course, cannot be only achieved by the government's incentives. If the private sector does not support or embrace at the required level possible, vocational education and training will not come to the desired level. Otherwise, the industry will be challenged in terms of finding highly qualified people, and our students, on the other hand, will also be challenged. However, when we come together with our industrialists and the members of the private business and enterprises, as government, we attach importance and bring people's attention to the importance of vocational education. And in such projects, when our government take a lot of responsibility, private sector also needs to shoulder responsibility. Otherwise, it will be a matter of benefiting from what has already been produced, and it will not be sustainable. However, I see that our industrialists and our private companies also own up to this initiative. All companies at the industrial organized zones have participated to the vocational education center initiatives. And thanks to such initiatives and projects, we all ensure the training and education of highly qualified people. This system will equip our students with all the skills that they need, and also we are determined to further improve this model which will offer them the opportunities of practicing their jobs as soon as they graduate. In this, we increase the employment rates, also reduce youth unemployment rates, and all these will play a significant role. This strong tie in between vocational education and private sector will then um, put the complaints that one cannot find highly qualified labor force, to the pages of history. We'll send it to the pages of history, and I hope that this new system will be auspicious. I would like to thank the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Technology and Industry, and organized industrial zones and all industrialists for the great support they have given for this important project. Now we will see one reality. In organized industrial zones, we will have schools, and consequently, we will have students who will transit to the organized industrial zones and commute in between their schools and practices. Who in the world does achieve that? Japan, for example, is successful, and why not? We shouldn't be, and we will also achieve in that. Thank you all very much. I convey my best regards and greetings to each and every one of you. Stay in health.
Efendim şimdi Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımıza canlı bağlantılara geçmeden önce Sayın Bakanlarımızı, Milli Eğitim Bakanımız ve Sanayi ve Teknoloji Bakanımızı refakat etmek üzere sahneye davet ediyoruz. Buyursunlar lütfen. Efendim şimdi yüksek müsaadelerinizle 3 farklı noktaya canlı bağlantı gerçekleştireceğiz. İlk bağlantı noktamız Erzurum 1. OSB Mesleki Eğitim Merkezi. Karşımızda Erzurum Valimiz ve Erzurum Büyükşehir Belediye Başkanımız bulunmakta. Arz ederim Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım.
Okay Memiş Bey, bizleri duyuyor musunuz?
Mr. Memiş, can you hear us?
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım, zatı devletlerinizi çok net duyuyoruz efendim.
Mr. President, we can hear you very clearly. Thank you very much.
Şu anda tabii Erzurum'dayız.
Right now, we are in Erzurum, the mayor of Greater Erzurum municipality, Mehmet Sekmen, and Mr. Özmen, MHP Erzurum provincial head, Mr. Karataş, and Mr. Urguç, the president of the Erzurum Industrial Organized Zone, are there. And they're all together in Erzurum, where there's a lot of heavy snowfall. So if we can zoom in a little bit, it will be very much to the point.
Evet. Erzurum 1. Organize
Yes,
Sanayi Bölgesi.
Erzurum, first organized industrial zone, vocational high school is what we see on the screen right now.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım,
Evet, dinliyoruz.
Mr. President, yes, we hear you. Mr. President, welcome to Erzurum. We would like to send our greetings to you from Erzurum with respect. Mr. President, in our city we have 45 vocational training and education centers. And as you know, we have 3 organized industrial zones. the number of the apprentices was only 673, Mr. President. However, with the incentives and encouragement by the Minister of National Education and Minister of Industry and Technology, we have increased this figure to more than 25.